We already know how to find the domain and range of discrete data. Discrete means individual points that are not connected. So here the domain will always represent the possibilities of the x values. Here the domain, our x-axis is labeled as time in weeks. So what were the number of weeks involved in the story of me getting paid my allowance? I started at 0 weeks, then we had 1, 2, 3, and 4 weeks in that story. The range represents all possible y values in our story. And here the y-axis is labeled number of dollars. So what was the amount of money that I had at any given time during the story? I started with $0, then I had 8, then 16, then 24, then 32. Now, making the domain and range of continuous data, this line represents all of the possible points. This was me walking from the stop sign to the car. And there are an infinite number of distances between the stop sign and the car because we have centimeters, millimeters. I can have so many different options of writing, and I'm not going to write all possible numbers of feet out in my range. So there's a shortcut that we can do. So the domain again is all possible x values of the story. Here x is time, so the domain is all the possible times of my story. So we can see here that my story started at 0 seconds and it ended at 10 seconds, right? My red line stops at the x value 10, 30, so 10 represents the number of seconds. So instead of trying to individually list all the possible times, we can just say the domain is all times between 0 seconds and 10 seconds. And we write this mathematically with these inequality symbols. Notice that it's less than or equal to. There's that little line on the bottom. That means that 0 and 10 are included in our solution set. This just means we can break this down into two different inequalities that says x, my time, is greater than or equal to 0 seconds, and the time is less than or equal to 10 seconds. How do we write the range? The range is always going to be possible y values of the story. Here, y is distance, so the range is all of the different possible distances. There are a lot of distances going on in this story. Instead of trying to individually list all of them, we can just say the range is all distances between 0 feet and 30 feet. So we write this, we have a y in between instead of an x because we're talking about range, and range is y values. So this is just saying our range y can be any distance between 0 feet and 30 feet, including 0 and 30 feet. So y can be greater than or equal to 0 feet. Y also has to be less than or equal to 30 feet. So if we practice, here's practice question 1 that we did in our Nearpod. I'm going to go over how we got the answer. So starting with the domain, x values, right? I'm looking at my x-axis, and I see that there's a green line here. It doesn't take up the entire grid, it only takes up a section. So the domain is asking which section of the x-axis is this line taking up? So if I create a rectangle around this line, it's easier to see which x values this line is spanning. So the smallest x value of the box is 3, and the largest is 2. So I write that in my answer. The smallest one was -3. So I write -3, and I write a 2. So x is any number between -3 and 2, including -3 and 2. That's why I have these or equal to signs underneath the less than. Then range is all possible y values. So we look at the y-axis. What's the smallest y value of the box? It's -5. So we write our -5 first. What's the largest y value of the box? That's 5. So we write that second. Is this function increasing or decreasing? We read in English from left to right. So if we scan this graph from left to right, this line is going up. So it's increasing. When we have a dot that's not filled in, that just means that that point is not included in our answer. So here we have both dots are filled in. So we're going to say x can be any number between 0 and 5, including 0 and including 5. We have these or equal to signs here. If the box is not shaded in, we're not going to put that or equal to sign underneath because x is not equal to 0 here. It's everything that's beyond 0 until we get to 5, and the 5 is included because that box is filled in, but the 0 is not filled in. Here's where x equals 0. Here's my function where x equals 0. Not filled in, so we don't have the or equal to sign underneath.